Chicks here, time for another moto vlog. Decided I'd do the addendum to my how to buy a used motorcycle little vlog that I did in the Wildcat. Somebody suggested that I video some of the examples and parts on a bike that I talked about in the video just as a visual kind of guide thing, so I'm going to go ahead and do that today. Alright, here's my 2004 KTM ChixVlog Supermoto. Sweet little bike. So, some of the things that I talked about. Let's start out with the chain. This is a perfect example of a bad chain. There we go. That's a good sound. If it makes that little ching 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 noise like I talked about, that's a bad chain. This has way too much. It's already at its extent of its life. It's already fully adjusted all the way back. Still a ton of slack. Now this needs, because it's a kid's bike and an adult's riding it, it does need more slack than normal because you're going to be going through the shocks motion and it's going to be sweeping and getting tight and loose as the rear suspension actuates. So it does need to be loose, but definitely not this loose. That's pretty bad. So bad chain. Now this bike, because it's so small, I don't need, and it's not a sport bike or anything like that, I was able to get it up on a stand. So we're going to check the wheel bearings. Basically, you just kind of rotate it around. And these are Talon hubs, so they're in real good shape. I mean, there's no play whatsoever. You don't hear anything. It spins freely, even with the chain dragging. To get the front off the ground. Yeah, no play there. Nice and smooth bearing actuation. It's in good shape. Basically, to check the fork seals, clean this off here. So you've got a good clean surface, and all you need to do is put it back on my head now. Take the bike, have it on regular ground, grab the front brake and just plunge the front forks. I'm gonna go ahead and put it back up on the stand here. So I plunged the front forks. Let me get off my head. I'll take a look. You can kind of see where it went down to, but there's no, fluid, no anything wet on the fork tubes. I don't have any good example of this right now, but you can tell when the fork seals are leaking, whether it be inverted forks like these guys or non-inverted, where you're going to be looking at the fork tube, this thing up on top here. But if they're leaking, you can tell. So I've had bikes where it even like drools down the fork tube. So just look for that. You'll be able to see little lines on the tube if it is leaking, or totally wet, just fluid dripping. Rear shock, gonna take a look here. The bump stop, it's kind of cracked and nasty. That one, that's a common thing. Sometimes in older bikes it's even deteriorated or not even there. But yeah, the rear shock looks good. It doesn't have any, you basically look at the same thing you would on the forks. Actuate it and see if you see a ring or any fluid leaking or any, goo up around here. But now this one looks to be in real good shape. These probably are needing replacement. Like I said, this bike does need some maintenance. You can kind of see there. It's grooved. You can feel the grooves. A lot of street bikes will have a big, deep groove. And especially if you can test drive it, see if it stops. If it has, if it's kind of slow to stop, could need new brake rotors and brake pads. Or if you grab the front brake and it feels spongy or it goes all the way back to your knuckles, probably needs to be serviced. It probably has either low brake fluid, or the master or the caliper could be leaking. This is going to be your master cylinder here. It's going to be a line down to the caliper on your brake rotor. KTMs have a hydraulic clutch So it's not actually a cable that goes through here, it's just going to be fluid, just like your brake. Got a steel braided brake line here. So check your actuation. This one's very solid. Let's see. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to see anything actually physically moving on this one. But check the actuation, make sure it's smooth. It doesn't, you know, a lot of times the cable in here will get dry and full of dirt, especially on dirt bikes and older bikes. It feels really significantly hard to pull. Probably gonna need a new cable. So that cable, it'll be easy to show here on a dirt bike, usually snakes in around here. If it's a fairinged bike, it'll go back around and come over to the clutch basket over here. If you can, if it is readily available, take a look at the carb. Make sure there's no obvious like oil coming from anywhere. Common places are here, that's the drain. Around here, the bowl gasket. After they've been sitting for a while, that'll start to weep. So check for leaks there and there. There shouldn't be any obvious like openings. Everything should be tight, close, no like excessive oil anywhere. So that's kind of what to look for there. You know, around the head, all this is all clean. Shouldn't have any like grossness anywhere. Here's a good one. The shifter. Check the splines, make sure they're not super like gouged out. Take this off here and kind of get a good close up. They're in good shape. You can see it doesn't really have, it has the chain rubbed all over it. It doesn't really have any wear around the actual splines themselves. This shifter is really solid. So another thing to check on, other than just the splines on the shifter, see if it's leaking anywhere. There's a seal back there and around the output shaft here. Make sure there's no oil around that. Those are not the easiest to replace, those seals there. Another one's at the kickstart. If you're looking at a dirt bike like this, check and see if that seal's leaking. Water pump, you know, check gaskets. Make sure there's no oil fluids or any weird stuff, you know, around the engine. You can smell the gas. If it smells bad, that means it's varnished. Take a look. This is a plastic tank. Any cruisers or any bike that has a metal tank, go ahead and take a look in there. You can visibly see rust sometimes, so that may be contributing to bad running problems, getting clogged up fuel. If it does have rust in it, that means the fuel is going to be bad. And like I said in the previous video, when you go to pick up the bike or go to take a look at the bike, try to get the owner to not start it before you get there. Make sure the engine's cold. That's when it'll really show its true colors. And of course you can check the coolant if it is a non-air cooled. If it's a water cooled bike, just take off the cap. It's got fluid in it, looks good. I don't run any like glycol in this because it's not allowed on the track. So, but it's clear, it's clean. It's got enough in it, so that's good. We'll revisit that once I start it again. Of course, look for any obvious things, you know, damaged fairings, plastics, rust, you know, kind of the obvious stuff, bent handlebars, bent frames. So now we're going to move on to starting it. This is a bad example for a 4-stroke because this one's going to smoke. It's a 2-stroke. It has oil mixed in the gas. But I'm going to kind of show you what I meant by taking a look and seeing if it has head gasket problems. I'm going to open up the coolant and I'm going to show you how it kind of flows and looks. So let's see if I can actually get it started. Carbureted bikes can be grumpy. This thing probably hasn't started in about a month. So if you are looking at a 2-stroke bike, it should smoke. If your 2-stroke isn't smoking, you may have a problem. So let me show you what I mean about the coolant. Once the motor is on, you're coolant's going to be flowing. I'm gonna go ahead and kill it just so I can talk. Okay, so if you guys could see there, that was a good example of non-bubbling, no head gasket problems, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It didn't have any bubbles. I mean, if there's head gasket problems, generally it has quite a bit of bubbles. You'll be seeing, usually it's white, milky, not clear, like that's just water. Not white and milky, which means that it's coolant and oil mixing together. This is a two-stroke. It does burn oil. That's how they work. Oil is mixed in with the gas. Okay, so this is two-stroke. You can kind of see the smoke looks white. It's, you know, it's going to be kind of bluish on a four-stroke. If it is white bluish, it really depends. If it is having oil get into the combustion chamber, what it is not supposed to do on a four-stroke. If it has white smoke, like big fluffy white smoke, kind of like this two-stroke does on a four-stroke, that means probably that it's got some kind of head gasket issue, or there's coolant getting into the combustion chamber somehow. Black smoke is going to be a rich condition or having a lot of carbon buildup. So watch out for those three things. Bluish white smoke or blue smoke is a four-stroke burning oil. White smoke is going to be burning coolant, and black smoke is a rich condition or overly gummed up valves or anything like that. If you have problems starting it, whether it be kickstart or electric start, if it just doesn't want to start, but it starts better when it's hot, that means you may have some compression problems. Rings, worn cylinder, scratches in the cylinder walls, you know, on a four-stroke, valves that aren't fully seating. So let's give this a good kick. So this engine, based off of starting on the first kick, is in, you would assume, pretty good shape. Now I'm letting the clutch out. Hold the clutch in, disengages, engages, disengages. That's good. That's good engagement. No choppy, you know, yeah, it's very, very smooth. Get back into neutral. And if you know it's a bigger bike, you can't get it up on a stand or anything like that, that's very understandable. If you just want to kind of sit on it. Okay, first gear. When the engine's not running, you kind of got to rock them to try to get them in gear. Second, third, fourth, fifth. I went through the gears, no problem. First gear, back up to neutral. No problems. You know, kind of got to rock it a little bit just to get some force on the actual shift forks to get them to actually engage the gears. If you can, once again, check the air filter. See how a person's taking care of it. I think I cleaned it probably. It's maybe had about 15 minutes riding around this field since the last time I cleaned it, so it's obviously good. Some of them will be completely brown, full of dirt, black, nasty road grime. So that was in pretty good shape. But check the maintenance. Check the oil. See how dark it is. Make sure it's got a good level. Check the air filter if you can. See tires. These tires, not really a great example. Check them. Make sure they're not dry rotted. These are actually really old tires. I don't ride this on the street, so they're still a little gummy, you know. They've still got some life to them. And if you find something that's wrong with the bike, you can either walk away, or it gives you bargaining power, depending on, you know, how maintenance and mechanically savvy you are. So yeah, that's just kind of my little walkthrough through that. Once again, if you guys have any suggestions or questions, comment, let me know. Anyway, well, if you're looking at getting a new bike, good luck, and hope hope it all goes well. Until next time.